Hello, welcome to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. You're on the newsstreamingnetwork.com, home of Going Solo and Going Bold. Want to welcome you here tonight to a show called Going Solo with Cece. I am Cece Shatz, fondly called the Doyenne of Relationship Building. I'm a divorce, dating, and a life coach. And we have got a great show for you tonight. I am so excited about this topic. Have you ever been in a situation where you just didn't know what to decide? You've been back and forth on whatever the problem was, trying to figure out what the solution might very well be. Should you go, maybe at that fork in the road where should you go to the right? Should you go to the left? Well, we've got the guest for you here tonight that's going to help you with some of those, kind of instill that decision-making tools that will help you. So let's bring her forward. Nika, let's bring you forward here. Hello, how are
Hi,
you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Oh, it is so great to have you. Now, Nika, can you pronounce your last name for me?
Yes, my name is Nika Kabiri.
Kabiri.
Yeah.
And you're an expert in decision science. Now,
Yes.
you have been in the business for like 20 years studying decision making in a variety of different contexts, from relationships to politics to business. And you have a PhD in sociology with the emphasis on choice therapy, and you have taught decision science at the University of Washington. And you've also coached individuals with all walks of life. You are basically a career coach, a life coach, all of that. And so we want to thank you so much for joining us. You have worked in such high known companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and many others. And you've also had your work and your ideas appear in the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Fast Companies, Yahoo. I mean, I am blown away to have you as one of our guests, and you are just such a lovely individual yourself. So thank you so much for joining us here as we're going to talk about decision science. So tell us a little bit about, now I know I told a lot about you, but tell us a little bit more about you and how did you get into this field of decision science?
Yeah. I've always been fascinated by decision making, as I'm sure a lot of us have. But it wasn't until graduate school when I went to study sociology and I just got kind of pulled into this department within our bigger department of experts, like world renowned experts on choice theory, which
Mhm.
is really all these academics who would take economic models of decision making and apply them to sociological phenomenon, like, using choice theory, choice theoretic models, to use a fancy word, to explain mostly political things, like why would there be revolutions in some countries and not other countries? Why do people vote for one person versus another? I mean, economic models have been used to explain everything in social life, from why we marry who we marry, why we have the jobs we have. It all comes down to like individual choices that create these like broader phenomena that happen in the world. And that's when I
Mhm.
really got into it, really got fascinated by it. But the thing that really hit it home for me was when I started applying what I learned to my personal life,
Mhm.
and that everything just kind of changed for me. My life just got so much better. And that's why I do what I do now, because I really want other people to benefit from the science of decision making.
Yeah, knowing where I come from, knowing that I have been through a divorce and had a little, we talked off camera a little bit about that and how difficult it was for me at the very beginning. And I felt so stuck. I couldn't decide on what to do. Here I had, and I often tell the singles this is that here you are, you have a choice of creating this whole new life for you. But then how do you do it, right? How do you start making those decisions that are right for you? Because you start questioning the decisions you made in the
Yeah.
past because things didn't turn out the way you thought
Yeah.
they were. So then you think, oh, well, I'm just not good at decision making. I'm not good at making decisions that will last a lifetime for me. So, what would you say to those individuals that are really now embarking on this new life? They're maybe stepping into a new career, they're stepping into maybe even new relationships, who knows what they're doing now, but they're moving through their lives. So, how would you address that?
Yeah, this is big step, right? You're making life changes. And when you've made these huge decisions, as you said, that haven't panned out for you the way you wanted, you become more susceptible to what psychologists call anticipatory regret, which means that if you really regret a decision you just made, you're so much more likely to fear regret around your next decision. And according to research, that's one of the major causes of analysis paralysis. It's this emotional fear of the regret you might have if you mess up again. So really, the first step to getting past that is just recognizing you have this emotional response that is holding you back from moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's nothing wrong with you. It's not that you're, a bad decision maker, or that you're, I think when I had my divorce, I kind of had thoughts of, oh gosh, I'm just such a relationship loser. Like I suck at this. But the fact of the matter is that's just an emotional kind of response. And decision making is really not necessarily always an emotional exercise. When you make the right decisions for your future, all you have to do is envision the future you want and then decide on what conditions will get you there. Like, what's going to get me the life I want?
Mm-hmm.
And then go after that. There are very distinct steps that I write about in my blog, for instance. Like, there are very distinct steps you can take. You can feel whatever worry you might have about regret. Nothing wrong with you, but override that. The trick is to override that by knowing, there's a bias here. I'm not going to let it get the best of me.
Yeah. Well, life is full of decisions, right? There are big decisions and little decisions and decisions that you can kind of tweak, I think, as you go along in life, right?
Yes.
And so maybe we just need to step out of that and step out of the fear of making the wrong decision, because maybe no decision is wrong. Because I've often thought, and maybe you could answer this, is I've often thought that maybe we're where we're at because we're supposed to be there. There's something we're supposed to learn, along the way. Maybe we haven't learned it yet, so we're being tested again and shown again. So we have to feel that and get through that again. What would you say to that?
I think I would say that's super insightful. I mean, there's definitely research to support this idea that we often have what's called action bias. It's this like this sense or this kind of impulse when things are going wrong to do something. We just got to do something, And I think I've heard people tell me all the time, like give me advice even, or give each other advice, like just do something, anything, as long as you're doing something. And that's not always the best way to go, because that is sometimes a bias.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, there was a study done on soccer goalies where they learned that soccer goalies always, when there's a free kick, right? They'll jump to the right or to the left. They almost never stay in the middle. When statistically speaking, the ball almost usually goes right down the middle. So they're better doing nothing. But it's this tendency that I gotta do something, right? The ball's coming towards me. I gotta take an action. That's not always the best thing to do. So yeah, sometimes, not always, but sometimes doing nothing is exactly as you stated. It's an opportunity to gather information, to slow it down, to cool it down, gather what we call data, evidence, to make the right objective decision. At the end of the day, if you are making choices that lead to the desired outcome you have, like that life you envision, it doesn't matter if you make them right away.
That's true. That's true. Because a lot of times it will wait for you.
Yeah,
it will wait for you. Yeah. I have a friend that always tells me all the time, just take a breath. Take a breath.
Advice.
Yeah.
I say that all the time.
Before you step into something, yeah. So yeah, it's amazing how sometimes we want to go so boldly into something, and when we do need to take a step back and do it slowly. So what would you say to those individuals who are, looking now at their career and they're looking at life as it is, because often there's so much has happened in our economy and all of that, but they're looking at, changing careers or doing something like that. Is there any advice you can give them on how to go about maybe doing the research they might need to do in order to make that type of decision?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question, because one of the big mistakes that people make when they feel like they're ready to make a decision is they just dive into research and they don't
Mhm.
really know what they're looking for. They're just, maybe they're going on LinkedIn or on Indeed and looking for job postings and trying to find something, or maybe they'll, read a lot of articles about, like, career changes at 50 or something like that. And it's, none of it might be directly related to your circumstance. So I think, it's really, really important to start those kinds of huge, almost irreversible life decisions with a clear sense of what we call the desired outcome. Like, what is the end game that you're
Mhm.
looking for from the decision, rather than
Mhm.
starting in the present and like scrambling to look for options or researching options or seeking advice, like, what should I do? Like you said, take a breath, take a beat. What is the outcome you want? And the big piece of advice I would give when you start to dream about that outcome that you want is to dream without deciding. I think it's our brains are very fast moving. They like to be efficient. So they will want to jump to decisions before we're ready to decide. And too often we think, well, maybe I'd really love to have, you know, I'd love to be an author. I want to write a book. But as soon as we say that, we tell ourselves, our fast moving brains tell ourselves, that'll never happen. We decide on it. We don't have the information yet to know if that will happen. So if you really want to do the right research, you have to understand what it is you want to achieve, and then work backwards and do the research, not to determine can I or can't I do it, but like, what needs to happen for me to do that? Like, the right research would be, if I want to be a book author, under what conditions can I succeed as a book author? What do
Mhm.
book authors need to do well? How do you become a published writer? That's what you start researching. And then you start going down the list and thinking, okay, maybe I can do that. Maybe I can pull this off. How can I pull this off? That's your next stage of research. That's the way you kind of should go about it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it really does. I like the idea of going backwards, right? Where your end result is, and if it's just like you want to make money,
Yeah.
then you got to start and think, well, what would make you happy? What kind of job would make you happy? Because you don't want to be in a job. And like my son's going to college now, and we talk a lot, and I say to him, you got to figure out what makes you happy, because
Yeah.
you don't want to get into a career that
Yeah.
just because your dad might like it and it's successful now, but is it going to make you happy? Because you're going
Right.
to be in it for a long time,
That, I mean, how many people do you know at our age, right? Like, that are stuck in these careers. Like,
Hmm.
how did I end up here? How did I end up here? And it's really those initial decisions right out of the gate that get you locked into this path. If you get a job in marketing right out of college just because it pays well, you better be prepared for a career in marketing, because the only job you're going to get after that is in that field. It's really hard to switch. It's
Hmm.
one of those decisions, like marriage, that kind of locks you in. It's really hard to change paths. So yeah, for career decisions, absolutely dream a little. You don't know if you can pull it off or not until you do the research. So
Yeah.
think about fulfillment.
Hmm. That is so right. What we're going to do is take a quick commercial. When we come back, let's talk about gut instinct,
Oh, I love
because
that.
we often say, "Oh, I'm going to do this or that," because our gut kind of drives us to that. We've got this feeling we should be doing something, and I get that all the time. So let's talk about that when we come back. Now, before we go and do that, I want to make sure you guys have her contact information. So it's Nika, Nika, at yournextdecision.com. If you want to send her a message or an email, she would love to hear from you. Her website is, again, yournextdecision.com. And then if you have trouble getting into that, if you go www.yournextdecision.com and you have trouble with it, just put in your next decision and see if that pulls up. But she's also got this great blog that I want to share this with you, because I think it's important that maybe you save this on your computer and check it out. But it's under Substack. So you go under Substack, substack.com, / then @ your next decision. And we've got got it all right there for you. And it'll be in our show notes. We'll change our show notes to make sure we add that to it so you have it. But definitely check that out, because I think, especially a blog, it always changes. There's like new stuff there all the time. It's really fun to read, and it's a great way to be able to connect with Nika and keep all the information that she has that's readily available for you. So you guys, you're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. This is the newstreamingnetwork.com, and we'll be right back. Hang tight. Hello, welcome back to Going Solo with Cece. I'm your host, Cece Shatz, and you're on newstreamingnetwork.com, the home of Going Solo and Going Bold, and our wonderful radio station, WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. I want to thank you guys for listening to us all the time, listening to us on Roku under the New Streaming TV app. We do appreciate it, and we just love you so much for it. So let's get on back to our subject, because we're talking about decision science. What's your next decision? We have our wonderful guest here on today, and she's an expert in decision science, and it's Nika. And I want to make sure you guys get her website and everything. I want to make sure we have that available, and you can reach her at yournextdecision.com, So make sure you check out her website and also join her blog, because it's a lot of fun. Well, the first part of the show, we talked about, kind of having that fork in the road and trying to figure out what you want to do in life. And often, if you're a little bit not knowing what exactly it is that you want to do, Nika had suggested thinking about what the end result, what are you trying to achieve, and then back it up, right? Go in reverse, and then that way you can start to understand a little bit more what it takes in order to achieve your goal, and then you can make the right decision that's good for you. And again, we talked about no decision is a bad decision. It just kind of gets you to where you maybe are, and then we want to make another decision to get out of that one. So it's just, life is full of decisions, and that's kind of the way it is, isn't it, Nika?
It is. And most of them are bad. I mean, even Nobel Prize winners in decision making make bad decisions. So you can't decide, well, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just human.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Well, let's talk a little bit about, so often we say, oh, we're going to do this, or we're going to make this decision because we have this feeling, right? We have this gut feeling. And women, are known to have this intuition. Okay. And they always say, follow your intuition. If you've got a feeling on something, go ahead and follow it, do it. So what do you say about that?
I say that there is a time and place for using your gut. And I think that people who always use their gut are missing out on information or evidence that could actually make your decision better. I think that people that value always being rational are using up a lot more brain energy than they need to. There is a time and place for it. A lot of decisions we make really aren't that important. If you're out for a really, a fancy dinner, you're going to splurge. It doesn't matter what you eat. All options look great. Just use your gut. That's fine. Sometimes even vacation. Where do you want to go on vacation? Everything's going to be fine. Use your gut. But if it's buying a home, there are a lot of home buyers who use their gut, chose a home because it felt like the right place, moved in, and then found out that, there's a lot of noise in the street, or that they didn't really check the foundation or do their due diligence about neighbors. There's a lot of objective evidence you need in order to make decisions that are, say, high stakes, or you can't reverse, where the outcome really does matter. So I would say be careful about, before you just go into a gut decision. Ask yourself, is this the kind of decision that warrants some thinking? And if it is, then do the research. Use your head.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Now, what would you say about those? And this is my problem, and I will confess, is that I make life harder for me. I often say God will open a door, but I've got to climb through the window instead, right? And so partly that is because I have trouble with making like a full decision, right? So I'm not making this full decision, but I'll make a little decision to get to the full decision,
Mm.
right? Sometimes that kind of mucks things up when you do that because it's not really the best thing for you. So what would you say about those individuals that, are like always kind of on the fence, making their lives a little bit harder for themselves, if that makes sense?
Yeah, what I hear you saying is that maybe some of us kind of beat ourselves up for not being able to decide, first of all. Like,
Mhm.
I think we really get hard on ourselves because we are stuck often. And the most critical thing I learned to do as a decision maker in my everyday life was really understand that if I'm not great at making decisions, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me. There's so much science that points to the fact that we are not really designed as human beings to make really great decisions a lot of the time, especially in this complex modern world that we live in. We're inundated with information. There's so much at stake, it seems, especially these days with every choice that we make. Our options might seem limited a lot of the times. There's some very real reasons, both psychologically, socially, and that really make, even emotionally, that make decisions very hard. If we're under a lot of stress, we're less likely to make good decisions. So just it's very realistic. It's much more realistic to assume, if you're stuck a lot, you're always on the fence, it's okay.
Mhm.
Really just take a beat. That's going to be like the theme, right? Take a breath. Again, what is the outcome you want? I found in coaching the most, there are two things that keep people stuck the most. One is going back and forth between options without having enough information about them. Like
Mhm.
they assume they have enough knowledge or information when they don't. Like choosing between job A and job B and salary, benefits. There's always something more that you could ask. Like what about culture? What about, what more do you need to know about the hiring manager? What do you want to know about the financial projections for the company? There are other things you could look at. So that's one thing. But the other thing is just not knowing what you're after. And a lot of us are so afraid to dream and
Mhm.
hope and strive for some outcome that could really make us happy. And if you have the courage to dream about it without deciding on it, just what do you want? Decide after you've done the research to see what would make that happen. Following that step and going backwards often gets at least my clients out of that on the fence thing.
Mhm. Very good advice. Very good advice. And then I often think that, someone asked me a long time, what is the biggest thing that holds people back? And I think the biggest thing is fear, so fear on making a decision, whether you're making a good decision, bad decision, or sometimes just making the decision itself is fearful. So what would you say to those that are struggling with that? They're trying to step forward in their lives and now they're, whether it be a job or relationship or whatever, and they're, they are on that fence and they are fearful. So what would you say with fear?
I would say reframe the concept of fear as one of risk, because
Mm,
you can mitigate risk. You can estimate risk. I mean, this sounds like a fancy kind of like hard thing that academics do, but you can do that. So if you think about what you want and you think about, oh, well, what ifs, right? All the what ifs. And that's where the fear comes in.
right.
What if I want to get a college degree? What if I'm not smart enough? What if I go back to school and I waste all that money? What if at my age I don't fit in? What if? Um,
Hmm.
you can actually determine, okay, well, how many people actually do fail out of that degree? I mean, how well did I do in getting my last degree, you can kind of look at that evidence and estimate, well, maybe the risk is super high, maybe the risk is super low, maybe the risk is in the middle, but it's enough it's worth it to take that risk. So if you think about like calculating what are the chances rather than I'm never going to make it, I'm worried about never making it, and thinking about what the risk is in terms of like a number scale, then you can actually step back and go, is this worth the risk? And if it is, then do it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Thank you for that. Now, can you share with us, like, when you're talking to individuals about decisions, is there any one area that kind of comes out a lot that you're finding?
Work decisions, career decisions,
Hmm.
because they're common, they're
Hmm.
discreet. They are kind of broad too. Like some want to know about how to communicate with a boss that's toxic. Some come to me asking about, well, what job should I choose between? Some are are mid-career. They're older, they've had a career, they're at a crossroads, they don't really like what they're doing, they want to change. So they come to me asking, how do I make a change? The second biggest area is relationships with, should I get a divorce? What should I do after my divorce? Where should I live after my divorce? Um, all of these different kinds of, really, it's just those big life questions that
Hmm.
either happen at the very beginning of what career should I choose, or should I, a lot of millennials and Gen Zers are wondering about whether they should, dump their their partners, but also, it happens in midlife.
Hmm.
So those are the big ones.
Yeah, yeah. Now, tell us, can you help them with those particular
Yes.
things? And then what would you go about doing? Like, let's say, for instance, it's a career. What's the first steps that you would need to do?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I walk them through what I call my 3C decisioning process. And the
Mhm.
3Cs refer to conclusions, which is, what is the desired outcome you want? Let's start at the end. And I
Mhm.
guide them through the process of dreaming without deciding, getting
Mhm.
those biases out of their heads so they can actually put down where they're at, what they're after. The second step is, what are the conditions? The second C is conditions under which those conclusions can be achieved, which is just another way of saying what has to happen for you to get what you want, whether it's something you got to do or something that has to happen outside of yourself. And then I would coach people through the process of getting the right information. And I kind of work as a referee a lot of times.
Mhm.
I notice like they're being biased by the bandwagon or influenced by friends, or they're moving too fast, or they're engaging in biases. That's where a lot of the coaching comes in, is helping them recognize that and then overcome those. And then the
Mhm.
third C is chances, which is, what are the chances that any of one of these options is actually going to work? Any of these conditions are going to be possible or successful in getting you what you want? Because those options with the strongest chances are the ones that will get you there. So in my coaching, what I do is I help guide folks through the research process in gathering the right information and training them to think in terms of chances and how to estimate chances in a very comfortable, familiar way that's not necessarily academic or heavy in math. It's just really easy, but it helps you think more objectively through that process and, get them to the right outcome.
Very good, very good. Because I know it's very difficult for individuals to try to figure out what path they want to take and where they want to go. And, when you're looking at like a long-term career or even a short-term career, you're looking at a career of some sort, and then, your money and all of that. It can be very overwhelming when you're looking at all of that. And then also, of course, a relationship change, some sort of shift in your relationships, and that can be very, very trying. And then you start questioning yourself, doubting decisions, that you could make. And so it becomes extremely overwhelming. People need individuals like yourself to kind of help walk them through that. So I totally appreciate you and all that you do.
Thank
It's
you.
just tremendous because we didn't have this years ago when I was going through my divorce. So
You wing
it
it.
was nice to see. It was nice to see.
Thank
For
you.
sure,
Thank you.
for sure. But I've been very fortunate to always have very good friends that will kind of, push me in areas where I doubt myself. And what would you say about that? Because often I think you being a coach, that you really can help those that really doubt themselves on whether they can, like you might see that something really is a workable thing for them, but their doubt in themselves, it doesn't allow them, through that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, what seems to work is just knowing that it's not just my opinion that we struggle with decision making.
Hmm.
Nobel Prize winning researchers have done tons of documentation on why it's legitimately challenging for humans to make difficult decisions. So when I say that, it often and I couple that with with urging them to just cut themselves some slack. You're not going to make the right choices all the time. All you're trying to do is improve your odds of getting to where you want to go. And if you're
Hmm.
moving in the right direction, then, and maybe that's good enough. That's better than a lot of people manage just winging it. But there's that. But there's also this knowledge of knowing that there is a whole world of science out there: psychology, behavioral economics, sociology, neuroscience. There's all this research out there, even physiology, about what makes decisions better, what makes them poor. If you follow my blog, read my upcoming book, you will learn all these little tricks for how, like, making better decisions that are backed by science. You can be empowered. It's really an empowering tool, a life improvement tool to just learn the science behind decision making. You'll be fine.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So share with us a little bit about your upcoming book. I know it's not out yet, but share a little bit about it so those that are listening can make sure they put this on their, to-do list to purchase when as soon as it comes out.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really, really early stages in the process. So it might not be a while. If you go to yournextdecision.com and subscribe, you'll get notified if it comes out. But it is a self-improvement book. That's what
Okay.
it is. It is
Mhm.
all about using the 3C decisioning process to work through basic or big life challenges. So it starts with the foundations of good decision making, and then it goes through the 3C decisioning process, and it just walks you through some case studies, like defining the relationship. When we're dating somebody new, a lot of people don't want to call it anything. Like, should we have that conversation? Career changes, mental health struggles. I talk about my own personal story, struggling with mental health, and how applying decision science to my own life actually saved my life. So it's that's really what it's all about. And you'll see, like, drips of it coming out through my blog. So if you subscribe there, you'll learn a lot more.
Well, definitely I'm going to subscribe, and I
Awesome.
put me on the list because I definitely want to get the book when you bring it out, because I think it'll be definitely improving, and I'm all for, improving our lives and continuing on. And I've often said, things have happened for me. I don't know why. I mean, I don't even know why I'm doing what I'm doing now, but it's just the door just opened and I was just encouraged, and so I just made the decision to go with it, and not to look back, just go forward. And it's just been a blessing. So the last, 12, 13 years. So I've been doing this. So I'm just very, very thankful and blessed. So I hope those out there that are listening that feel they're kind of like stuck in the muck and not quite knowing exactly which way to go, you're at that fork in the road, please contact Nika at yournextdecision.com. You can reach her there on the email. Let her know you saw her here on the show, that you might have a question or two. You do private consulting, am
I
I
do.
correct?
I
Yeah,
do.
so you do that too. And then, of course, her website, yournextdecision.com, and join her blog, which is on substack.com /@ your next decision. So make sure you catch the blog. blog, because I think it'll be interesting to be able to see what all you're dripping through on that, because I think that would be enjoyable. Well, we're probably going to have to wrap up the show. Are there any last words you'd like to share with our audience today?
Just one thought is you can turn it all around with your next decision.
I love that. I love that. So no matter where we're at today, no matter how we're feeling about it, we're only just one decision away from something beautiful. So yeah, that is truly inspiring. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. So again, go to our website, yournextdecision.com, join our blog, which I am going to join. It's substack.com and then the slash and then at your next decision. And we'll put that up on our show notes so it'll be easy for you guys to get. But I want to thank you so much for joining us here today, Nika. You are wonderful. And I love our topic about decision science. What's your next decision? And so I'm going to ask you guys out there, I'm going to ask you, what is your next decision? And if you need some help along the way, Nika can help you with that. So you guys, you're listening to Going Solo with Cece. I am Cece Shatz. I'm the Doyenne of Relationship Building. And you are on newstreamingnetwork.com, home of Going Bold and Going Solo, and our wonderful radio station, WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network. I want to thank you so much for joining us today and all the other times that you join us. We appreciate it. Make sure you check out our Roku app on New Streaming TV. We want to thank you so much for joining us there. So I'll talk to you later. Bye for now.